So welcome everybody to Writing from a Title, and today's workshop will be step-by-step a process that I have used many times, and hopefully you will use many times as you write your songs as well. So the first thing I wanted to do today is actually share a song that I had written using this exact process. So I wanted to share my screen here, and let's go here. So can you see the screen that says mirror on the top here? Perfect. So I used and we talked about this before, but I've used a random word generator and it gave me the word mirror. And the first step in the process that we're going to do today is we're going to do some free writing on a topic. And since my word was mirror, I wrote staring back at the eyes that look back through the dirty mirror. Speckles of soap and toothpaste like modern artwork on the surface of the glass. She sighs that she doesn't like the person she is looking at anymore. Does she even recognize that person? It looks like someone that she never wanted to be. It feels like failure. More lines, more pounds, less energy. Every gray hair is like a worry that took physical form. Every morning feels like a reminder that she wants to change, but it's so hard. People still love her the way she is, but she doesn't. She doesn't like the person that she sees in the mirror. It's not how she sees herself. More stress on top of everything else that is going on in the world. It's all so heavy and so depressing. So that was my free writing. I had set a timer for about 4 minutes and just wrote from the topic of mirror. And using the steps that we're going to go over, I ended up coming up with this song called She Doesn't. So I'll go ahead and play this and you guys can hear how that free writing became this song. And yeah, we'll talk about it after this. Oops, let's go back to the beginning.
She doesn't know the girl in the mirror. Extra pounds and grays make it clear. She doesn't like the person she sees. Compliments come from all of her friends, the sweetest things they've ever said. She doesn't get what they see. She doesn't see her magic beauty, and she wishes her feelings were different. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. And she doesn't feel like she's enough, and she hurts even when she feels numb. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. It takes a long time to work through the wounds. Lord knows she has work to do. Maybe someday she will see what they see. But she doesn't see her magic beauty, and she wishes her feelings were different. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. And she doesn't feel like she's enough, and she hurts even when she feels numb. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. She wants to get back to loving herself. She wants to feel like herself again. She wants to see what they see. But she doesn't see her magic beauty, and she wishes her feelings were different. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. And she doesn't feel like she's enough, and she hurts even when she feels numb. Everyone sees she's special, but she doesn't. She doesn't. she doesn't.
So that was a song that I had written using this process. So we'll talk about kind of more of that. Eve, thanks so much. Eve said nice melody in the chat. That's one thing that I try to focus on a lot more than I used to when I first started writing songs is the melody, because the melody has such a strong impact on how it carries what you're trying to say. And we're actually going to do a full melody workshop coming up in August, so you guys will definitely want to check that out. But we'll talk about melody in this process as well, because your title can actually help you develop your melodic motif and how that works. So any questions or anything on that song? So talking about writing from a title, sometimes I hear songwriters that say, I'm working on a song, but I don't know what it's called yet. And there's a part of me that always cringes a little bit if they're super far along in the song and they still don't know what the song is called. And I understand that songs develop in different ways, but I've always been a person that the title really has a strong job to do within the song itself. And Pat Pattison, who is an instructor at Berklee College of Music, I've taken some of his courses, read his books. He says that you should figure out your title at your earliest possible convenience. Now, does that mean you figure it out right away? Not necessarily, but when it becomes sort of apparent or when it becomes important to have a title, that's your best time to have it, because it can help be a guide and a northern light for what you're doing. So Adam, you have your hand raised.
For the first time in a long time the other day, when I was writing a song, midway through it, I changed the title.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was I know what we're doing today is pretty much how I write too. I mean, I always try and start with the title, but sometimes things take a turn. And I think it was really liberating to kind of follow the path of this new title, because I was really clinging to what was a very clever title, but it was a much bigger challenge to kind of make that hook and set up land with that really clever title than it was with this much more on the nose title. So anyway, I guess that's another, my 2 cents, try and find the most appropriate title. Thank you.
No, but to your point about, sometimes you start to chase a song, a certain direction. And I think one of the things that I've had to learn for myself, and I still haven't totally surrendered to doing what's best for the song sometimes I'm stubborn and I want to do what I think the song should be, and the song is telling me something else. So I think what you're referring to is really sometimes you have to honor what the song is telling you and sort of let it develop into what that looks like. So yeah, that's great. That's great that you were thinking through that process, Adam, for sure. So many professional songwriters actually start their writing sessions by finding and deciding on a title, because what this does is it gives you that central focus and it gives you something to write to. So a lot of times when you are in co-writing sessions, especially, starting with a title can really help you determine what direction you and your co-writers are taking the song. And even when you're writing by yourself, this can be sort of the lens that you look at things through and try to determine how do you develop the title. So in the last week, after the first meeting, I actually ended up seeing an interview clip about writing from a title on The Tonight Show. So I wanted to play this clip for you all because I think it fits perfectly into what we're talking about, and it's advice that Demi Lovato got from John Mayer. And John Mayer studied under Pat Pattison, who we just mentioned. So it's kind of full circle. So this is pretty cool.
I also heard when you write songs, and by the way, there's such an art that goes into every single song written, no matter what song is out. It's like, but how do you attack it? How do you approach it? You write the titles first and then write the song?
Yeah, so I actually learned this from John Mayer. Like years ago, we wrote when I was like making my second album, I think, and he was like, he said something about creating songs from the song titles. And just like loving, he thinks that that would be the most intriguing. And so I kind of took that, and when making my last couple albums, I really learned how to write songs from the song titles. And I come up with concept ideas from the song titles, and that's how I write my music.
Do you think about them like when you're dreaming and just wake up and record it on your phone or something?
There are times where I'm about to fall asleep, and I have to wake up to either record it or write it down on my phone, and it's so annoying, but like...
It's kind of, I come up with ideas, and sometimes it's embarrassing to play it back, because I'm just like, I mumble something in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm half asleep, and I'm like, I'm gonna ruin this, I'm falling asleep right now, but like I might have a hit song out of it, so.
Yeah. What if I came up with some titles? Could you write a hit song if I came up with a title that...
On the spot?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
you've done it
yeah.
for the next album.
Yeah, let's do it.
And what any genre? Any type
I
of
mean,
word?
rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
How about spit?
Spit.
Spit is that might be too harsh.
No, spit could be kind of hot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, now I was gonna...
They went into some other things too, but I thought that was entertaining, and I thought it fit perfectly to see that, you know, there are a lot of songwriters that write from the title, including present company on this meeting as well. So jumping to the next stage, or actually the first step in what we're going to do today, and some of you who were with us last week noticed that I changed the topic, so you don't get to slide through a little bit. But the first step is finding a title, and sometimes when we sit down to write, we have titles, we have a concept, we have something to start with, but there's days where we don't have anything in mind, and we want to write a song, but we don't know what to write about. I'm sure that all of us have had many, many days where it's like you have the time, you have the ambition, you don't have the idea. So one of the ways that you can do this is you can use free writing to discover song titles. So like I had mentioned for my song She Doesn't, I used the random word generator to find just a random word to write from. But today I'm going to give you a topic, and I'm going to set a timer for 4 minutes, and we're going to free write about a rundown hotel. And one of the things when you're thinking about things to free write about, first verses, and usually in a song, set up a who, a when, and a where. So one of the things that you can think about as you free write is you could write about a who, a person, you could write about a where, a place, or you could write about a time frame, so a who, when, or where. So today we're going to do a where free writing, and that's a rundown hotel. So I'm going to start the timer. You guys just write from your mind. Don't edit. Don't think about lyrics. Just whatever pops into your mind, and even try to focus on your senses. And then after the 4 minutes, we'll take a couple of minutes to go through and find words and phrases that could be song titles within what you had written. So I will start the timer, and we'll go now.
Chad, just to be clear, when you say rundown hotel, we're talking 2 words. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing.
Run down as in like decrepit or like not in great shape. So it's a kind of a rundown hotel, if that makes sense. So rundown.
No, I got it. I just wanted to make sure I understood it was both of the words.
So just write about the concept, whatever
Gotcha.
that brings to mind. For
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
All right. So our 4 minutes is up. So I know some of you, free writing probably feels a little awkward, or it doesn't feel natural to kind of get in that free flow kind of writing state, but free writing is actually something that you can practice on a regular basis, even try to do it daily, where eventually you'll train your mind to come up with and sort of tap into that subconscious kind of free flow thought within a short amount of time. So that's why a timer is important, because it makes you sort of work under a deadline to push yourself forward. So the next step in this process is read over what you had just written and look for words or phrases that could be song titles. So are there either individual words or are there like groups of words that sound like song titles? So go through and make a list of those, and we'll do this for about 2 minutes or so, and then select a title within that you're feeling the most resonance with right now. And that's going to be the title that you work with through the process today. So I'll give you a couple minutes to read through and write down some of the words and phrases, and then pick a title. All right, so that's a couple minutes there. I see some people still thinking and contemplating. And I apologize. For some reason, the chat was blocked. So Kiki, you asked if you can take screenshots. Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely fine. Susan said she's going to write the title from last week. Totally fine. Eve, sorry I missed your what is a rundown hotel. It's just a crappy hotel. Hopefully we got that. So so how did that feel for you all? Did you come up with some ideas? And if you want to share some of your title ideas, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand as well, and then I can call on you too. So Glenn says he had some ideas. The Grand Lady of the Town, awesome. Crossroads Commerce, and The Bar Next Door. That's cool. I like The Bar Next Door. That would open up tons of ideas. Stu says, as my dogs are barking, Stu says Swinging in the Wind, Something Nasty, Nocturnal Man. That's a cool one. I like that one. Before They Come, Turn and Run. Susan also got a title from this week too, Rooms by the Hour. Cool. Kiki says Ritz and Glitz. Leslie says Just a Block Away. Adam, not responsible for items left in the car. That could be really cool. Lauren is Hotel Hot. Robert, The Smell of Time. Umar says, How Did I Get Here? I Keep Asking Myself, and then Love of My Life. Those are great too. Vicky's keeps jumping here. Tear-Stained Faces, Babies in Dirty Clothes, Bare Feet, and Escaping the Real World. Awesome. You guys have some great titles here. So Karen has Leave a Light On, Gone with Her, No Telling When, A Very Thin Dime, Floating Beauty, Pierre, If the Walls Could Speak. Jocelyn has Hopeless, Broken. Those are really cool titles too. Ooh, Kiki, I like that one. Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes. So the title that Kiki has there, Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, that's what at Berkeley they would teach you is called a DNA title. So there's really two types of titles. That there's what we would call a DNA title, which it's just loaded with images. It kind of explains itself. It sets a scene without anything else. Because when you say Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, that instantly creates an image in your mind. So there's a lot to go on. The other type of title is what we would call a parasitic title. And parasitic makes it sound negative, but it's actually not negative. It just means it's a title that needs more explanation for it to make sense. So examples of that would be what Jocelyn put in the chat, hopeless or broken. Like, those words are still powerful, but they don't communicate the same DNA as like Kiki's title does. So what it means is it just needs more explanation in the song itself. But it's definitely one type of title is not better than the other. There's just more information in one, if that makes sense. Jay has Town Inn. Steven has Where Do You Go? So the next step in the process, step 2, And Kiki, if you're okay with it, I'm gonna use your title, Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, because that's such a cool title. This is where you start to brainstorm with tempo. And this is something that is a really cool exercise, especially if you don't know where to go with a title that you come up with. So what this means is you would sing or recite your title to various tempos of metronome. And you would try it at slow speeds and then sort of work your way up. And at each tempo, you try to experience or try to feel what that title means. And I'll show you how I kind of do this. Leslie has a question in the chat, though. She says DNA as in the usual meaning. A DNA title just means it sort of holds a lot of information in the title itself. So it holds images. It's very sense-based. It has a little bit more info than what another title that would need more setup would need. So with the brainstorming with tempo, one of the things that you can do is download a metronome on your phone, or you could use the metronome that's in your DAW as well. But I have one on my phone. Let me see what it's called. It's from Soundbrenner. I think I may have paid a couple of bucks for it. It's an app, but it basically is just a metronome that you can set the tempo, and then it will play a click. So it sounds like this. So this is 70 beats per minute. So one of the things to think about as you are writing titles is how are you going to set the title onto the beat? So looking at Kiki's title, Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, I want to show you guys how you can think about how you set the title on the beat, because it makes a huge difference. Can you guys see the whiteboard now? Perfect. So, Old Coffee, whoops. I can't type. So obviously there's multiple words in the title. And one thing that you can do before you start to set this to a beat is determine what words are you going to accent. So within songwriting, each measure or each bar has strong and weak beats, just like your title could have strong and weak words. So the word that you accent on a strong beat can change the meaning of your title. So an example would be, let's say we accent the word old. So if we have Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, that means it's not new coffee, right? Like it's old coffee and stale cigarettes. But what if we accent then the word coffee? So it would be Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes. So it's coffee and not something else, right? The feeling of that changes from when you say Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes compared to if you say Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes. But what if you accent the word stale? Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes. Then all of a sudden that spotlight is on the type of cigarette. So it changes the meaning of that title. So if you say Old Coffee and Stale Cigarettes, if you accent the cigarettes word, that now shines that focus on, you're really focusing on the idea of the cigarette. So in your writing process, it's good to go through your title and try accenting those words to see what feels like it's saying what you want it to say. So in my example of the song that I wrote, the title that I picked was She Doesn't. I decided that I wanted to accent the word doesn't, she doesn't, because if I accented she doesn't, it implies that there's someone else and it's actually her that doesn't, do whatever she's doing. So it changes the meaning. So the idea here is whatever word that you want to accent, you put that on a strong beat. And the strongest beat in your measure is your downbeat. So that's the 1. The second strongest is your 3. So as you think about where you're placing it in the bar, this starts to become important as you are using the metronome to recite the title. So I'm going to go back here and we're going to do old coffee and stale cigarettes. So I don't really know if I want to start it on the downbeat with old. What word do you guys feel like? And Kiki, maybe you have an idea of what you're thinking. What word do you think we should have on the downbeat here?
Well, it's more important.
Old.
More important that it's stale, so old and stale could be on downbeats or on strong beats.
Oh, you're extremely quiet.
Am I? Sorry, I'm going through this microphone. Can you hear me better now?
A little better, yeah.
The reverb. So I'm just thinking that the important words to me would be old and stale, because that's descriptive of the place they're walking into. So I might put those on the strong beat in the scenario you're talking about.
Perfect. So let's do that. So we'll start at 70 beats per minute. So it would be old coffee and stale cigarettes, or old coffee and stale cigarettes. See, I'm putting that on the strong beat, right? Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So the actual pattern of your stresses within the title itself are old coffee and stale whoops. See if I can pull this out here. So if you're lining up the stress patterns, so it's old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So if I had like an and on a strong beat, it would sound unnatural. So old coffee and stale cigarettes. Do you see how it's on the strong beats there? And this is a little bit sort of heady and not something that you may be doing right now, so I understand if it doesn't quite click, but this becomes so important on how your lines sing and how they become believable as well. Steven says, does this assume that your title are the only lyrics on the line? Not necessarily, because even if it's a line that has more words to it, you're still falling within strong and weak beats because it's all within a measure. So what changes, Stephen, is where in the measure you are starting it. So if we changed, so she's saying she wants old on the downbeat. What if we wanted coffee? So it would 2, 3, 4. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So the coffee is hearing, or the coffee is falling on that downbeat. So it's old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Adam says he hears a more syncopated title delivery where nothing falls on the downbeat. Um, whoops, stop that. So it depends on what you're trying to get across, Adam. So one of the things is if you're starting on the downbeat, it makes it sound like it's very certain and stable. Now, if I started off the downbeat, like Adam is saying, it changes how it sings. So it would be old coffee and stale cigarettes. Coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So it's still falling on the strong beat, right? Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So it sounds less stable coming off of that downbeat. But you kind of have to experiment with it, because what if you started, Charity says she hears old coffee and then starting on stale. So that would sound like this. Old, whoops. Old coffee and stale cigarette, or wait, this one's a little bit hard. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Or stale cigarettes. Old coffee. I'm stuck on coffee. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and that's a little bit harder. I can't get it right now, but I know what Charity's hearing it. But that's where you decide what you want it to be as, so what does this tempo communicate? Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So Kiki says, if the subject was out of her element being at this rundown hotel, a less stable syncopated deliver might evoke her feeling uncomfortable. Exactly. So what Kiki just said in the chat is it depends on what you're trying to say with the title. So experimenting with how you're placing it creates a different feel. So what if we speed it up and let's say we go to 100 beats per minute, and then old coffee and stale cigarettes, or old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So that changes the emotion of it, right? So that has a different emotion. And then what if you go to like 130? Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. So, and then let's go all the way up to 160, where you could either do it in this actual tempo or you could do it cut time. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee and stale cigarettes. Or it could be old coffee and stale cigarettes. Old coffee. I can't even do it that fast. So it's more cut time at that point. But the idea here is to change the tempo and really try to see what tempo of the song holds the most emotion. For me, I think somewhere in the like 70 or 80 beats per minute feels like it aligns with what I'm hearing as the title. Kiki, would you agree with that based on what you had said in the chat? So it's probably more of a ballad-y type of a song. But I think one thing that a lot of us don't do is we don't experiment with our titles, and we just kind of go with the tempo that we always write in. So I think one of the tips, and the main tip that I want you to get from this, is try it at different tempos just to see what pops out, because you might be surprised that maybe you were thinking about it differently than what you were. Eve says a combination on the upbeat and the downbeat accentuate the dynamic. It can accentuate the dynamic. I think what you want to try to do is have your lyrics sing in a conversational way, so you're not accenting unstressed syllables or putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable is usually the example that a lot of people use. Robert says, could making a chord change on a word make the word more emphasized? Absolutely. So chords can definitely do that as well. And Kiki says also stretching out the word old. Yep, absolutely. So that's the other thing too, is like if you say old coffee and stale cigarettes, it's still, if you listen, you're still falling on strong beats, but they're not all in the same measure. What my mind was doing, and when I do these things on the spot, I sometimes I don't think it through all the way, but I was kind of keeping it within one measure. But Kiki, to your point, you could stretch it out and then just make sure you're accenting the strong syllables within the phrase. So going back to the next step, or in the same step. So what emotions are behind your title at the various tempos? So we're trying to figure out what tempo do you want to use. The next step is use that tempo and that emotion to write a summary sentence, and really write a one-sentence summary or like a one-sentence hook that lists what your song is about. And use that emotion and sort of that concept that resonated with you. And one of the ways that you can get ideas on direction is really ask questions around your title. And that's, who is this happening to? When is it happening? You know, where is it happening? What about it is important? You know, why does this matter? Or how did we get here? Those types of questions. So just take a couple minutes and look at the title that you've selected, and write one sentence that kind of summarizes the entire idea and the central focus of your song. And I'll just set like a 2-minute timer and then come back. So take the title that you have selected today and write down that summary line, that hook line, and what the center of your song is. And we'll come back in a couple minutes. All right, so that's a couple minutes here. So hopefully you at least had some ideas of what your topic could be. And going back to the last step, you know, trying to figure out where it fits in the measure is really all about how it feels to you and how it sings, and does it sound natural and believable. Like in my song that I had written, She Doesn't, I had that rhythm like she doesn't, da da da. So I started with like just that, she doesn't. But then I was thinking like I could change that melody, use the same rhythm, so it'd be, she doesn't. So it was all based on that da-da-da rhythm pattern. So it's... So, old coffee and stale cigarettes. That's just kind of experimenting with that same rhythm, but you could obviously, Kiki, you could change that up, change the chords, but the idea is to use that title as sort of basically a motif that you can build from. So Glenn says his title is The Bar Next Door, and it's really, the song is about what the patrons hope to find there. Are they looking for love? Are they looking for emotional solace, etc.? Awesome. I think that's a really cool title and a really cool idea, because there's a lot of things that people go to the bar next door for, right? And even the concept of the bar next door implies that everybody kind of lives in the same community. So it's really about what do all these people that live in this little community, they all kind of go to the same place for, different reasons. So that's kind of the bar becomes that uniting factor. That's really cool. I like that. Awesome. Anybody else want to share what their idea was here? Pierre.
Yeah, I've got the title, If These Walls Could Speak. And in my summary sentence, I go, I reminisce about the good times that I had going to shows at the old hotel.
Cool. Awesome. So in your song then, are you thinking about like basically you could build on some of those memories and some of those images and all of that? Is that kind of what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, that's right. Seeing and we actually have a hotel in town. It was the home of the blues, and then, times are tough, and the ownership changed, and now it's a punk bar, and it's like, oh, but I was going to the blues and seeing some of the masters that would come in after their shows and play there. So yeah, it's to kind of bring all those memories. Now it's a skeleton of what it used to be, but the memories, if the walls could talk, boy, they would tell us stories about those guys. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely fertile ground to build a song on for sure, because lots of images and emotions and stuff. Awesome. Vicky, you had your hand raised as well.
Yes, my title is A Night in a Seedy Hotel. And the sentence I wrote says, a mature woman spends the night in a seedy hotel because she found a letter in her late husband's drawer as she went through his things after his death.
Wow. So that's a lot to fit into a song. But that's cool. So well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of depends on how you set it up, but after, if she did find his stuff, I mean, is really the idea of the song, I can't spend the night at home, so I'm spending the night at a seedy motel. Is that kind of the idea there? Because she just can't stand to be
the
at
idea
home?
is more like she found this letter in his stuff that has the name of a town or an address or something, and so she's going there, and then she's in the hotel wondering, what am I doing here? Does this really matter anyway?
Got it. Okay. So it's more the letter led her to somewhere else, and now she ended up chasing that down. That's really cool too.
Right.
Greg, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I have to first qualify that I think I sort of didn't free write on this because it just brought something specific to mind right away.
Sure.
And so I like free wrote on what came to mind, which is that, and okay, so my title is In Another Life. And I guess, and leading into that is he said he'd been a doctor in another life. And I'm right. That's specifically from, there was this Germain Hotel in St. Cloud. When I was growing up was a place that very poor people, like nearly homeless people would stay for very cheap, and it's a very rundown hotel. And there was a man in particular that I had met on the street there who was staying there every night, but every day he'd be walking around the street carrying a beat up leather suitcase in which he, had everything he owned. And his story was, as he told it, was that he had been a doctor and he had a wife and kids somewhere in the world. But
wow.
So.
No, that again, I mean, that has a ton of ways that you could take it from a song perspective. I think it's determining what is that what's the central emotion that you want the listener to get out of the song, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the story that we forget that we're communicating an emotion, right? So determining what's the point or what's in it for the listener, I think that's your next step, because that could go a lot of different ways as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice work, Greg. Susan says, thanks to the hackers from last week, she has 2 good song titles. Awesome. That's good. Stu has a summary of life and love have moved on and left me behind like a sign for a busted hotel. The title is just swinging in the wind. Awesome. So there you're kind of using the hotel as a metaphor, which is really cool too. Kiki talked about the smell of old coffee and stale cigarettes evokes painful memories for a woman who enters the lobby of a rundown hotel. The chorus deepens in meaning as the verses unfold. I think from that perspective, thinking of what your listener is going to want to know is, what are those memories and why is it painful for her? So I think there's an opportunity to explain, where does that smell create, something within the character, and why does that matter to the listener, for sure. And then Charity says, emotion, what do you feel and what do you want your listener to feel? Absolutely. So I think that's one thing that you should always keep at the center of your writing and decisions that you're making about songwriting is, how is this decision communicating the emotion that I want to communicate to the listener? Sometimes we have people that, or not people, but we have times where writers just start writing songs and they really don't necessarily think about the emotion part of it, and then they will do something that sort of kicks the listener out of that emotion. So maybe it's how the title is set in the bar, maybe it's the chords that you use, maybe it's the tempo, maybe it's the rhythms. If you're using a very fast rhythm, that has a different emotion than slow rhythms or longer notes. So thinking of what you're trying to say and then how the structure communicates that idea, that's what's called prosody. So one of the things that you're looking to do is create prosody, so your song is telling the story that you want it to tell. And welcome, Hans. I see that you joined us. Awesome. So once you have these... Oh, Eve has, sleeping in an old hotel room by myself, thinking that I'm surrounded by spirit from all the people that slept in the same room from far from the past. That's cool. That's really cool. And Jay has town inn. She sat in the dust-laden fields and welcomed with stories and tears. She sheltered the girls on the night. She harbored those gun-belted fights. But she never dealed out the cards, and she never poured whiskey dark. So Jay is actually getting into like writing rhyme, and he's writing kind of lyric as well. Not quite to that point yet. But moving on to the
Hello.
Oh,
Can
is
you
that
hear
you,
me?
Lauren? Yep, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Okay, I'll just be quick. So in my version, it's called the Hotel Hot. The EL of the hotel sign is it's a neon sign, and the EL is gone. So that's why it's called the Hotel Hot. But when he goes in, it's anything but hot. There's a worn out rug. It's late at night. The clerk is watching a black and white TV. He's clearly doesn't want to be bothered with anybody checking in. So that's what I wanted to say.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, so in that case, part of your verse is probably going to be using lines to really establish, where that title comes from. So you'll probably want to explain to your listener the neon sign is broken and like those types of things, so they can see that for sure.
Yeah, and I just wanted one other thing I forgot to mention is that there's a welcome mat. It's all worn out, and it's probably going to be called "Welcome to the Hotel Hot."
Cool. Awesome. Well, and the idea of a welcome mat being worn out is kind of, the idea of a worn out welcome could be something as well.
That's very true. Yeah. Cool.
So one of the things that some pros will do is they'll use the rhythm of the title to build other melodic motifs throughout the song to create a sense of unity, where the groove and even the melodies are used to kind of fit with that title rhythm. So it creates this motif that subconsciously makes everything gel together with your listener. And remember, melody is built from rhythm and pitch. So your title creates rhythm that you can build on. So I wanted to show you an example of a song that I wrote called Shame on the Moon. And when you hear the rhythm Shame on the Moon, it's kind of like da, 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 or Shame on the Moon. And I took that and created the beat of this song around Shame on the Moon. So it's like boom, ka ba boom, or shame on the moon, shame on the moon. And I created rhythms that held this together. So this is an example of using that title rhythm to build other parts of the song.
Full moonlight, silver on palm trees, bar on the beach in the sand, sound of the ocean with cocktails, chance meeting you changed my plans. Thought that I would have one drink and call it, never thought we'd have the night like this. I say shame on the moon that got us in this moment, and the passion of you, us dancing under starlight. I say shame on the moon for teasing us with romance. I say shame on the moon, shame on the moon. Oh, I still think of vacation, back to that one night of love. I can't forget what that felt like. Every full moon brings it up. I thought that I would move on and get past it, missing you again on nights like this. I say shame on the moon that got us in this moment, and the passion of you, us dancing under starlight. I say shame on the moon for teasing us with romance. I say shame on the moon, shame on the moon. You and me found a magic, magic, magic. Island lovers escape, 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 escape. It could never have lasted. No, 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 no. Like a breeze in the night, it had to fade away. I say shame on the moon that got us in this moment, and the passion of you, us dancing under starlight. I say shame on the moon for teasing us with romance. I say shame on the moon, shame on the moon. I say shame on the moon that got us in this moment, and the passion of you, us dancing under starlight. I say shame on the moon for teasing us with romance. I say shame on the moon, shame on the moon.
So that was an example of starting with the title. And that song, I took a course with Berkeley called Writing from a Title, and that was one of the assignment songs that I had written. But I used that shame on the moon as like a repeating sort of groove thing. And then this is something that you'll hear in a lot of other songwriters' songs too. So obviously I have not had as much songwriting success as Taylor Swift has from a commercial standpoint. I feel successful that I write songs and I get to meet you guys, but Taylor's cashing in on the actual financial side of things. But she has a song called Delicate, and Delicate, if you listen to the melodic motifs, there's a lot of triplet sounds. And I think it comes from the title. I think it comes from, because she says delicate or delicate. So you hear da 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 or da da da. So listen and see if you can spot all the places where delicate or delicate, delicate or da 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 or da 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 show up within this song, and then we'll come back and discuss this as well. And thanks for all the comments in the chat on my song as well. I really appreciate it. So did you guys hear how many times that sort of rhythmic motif showed up? I mean, delicate was like, is it too late to do this yet? Is it cool that you're in my head? You know, those were there were so many places where that rhythm showed up. And I think that's something that you can do in your songwriting to really give it a sense of unity, and whether or not you like the song, as my dogs are making weird noises in the back, whether or not you like the song, it has a certain unity to it that sometimes I think as songwriters we try to accomplish. And one of the ways that you can do that is to think in melodic motif, and your title holds a lot of information that can add to that sort of motif development. So that's what I wanted you guys to really pick up from that part of the process. The next step is we're going to move into steps that are really designed to help you create what I call a lyric palette. And this is really a list of possible words and ideas that you can review and reach into as you start writing your melodies and your lyrics and sort of fitting it all together. Really sort of, you know, painters a lot of times will determine what colors they're going to use within a certain piece. So they'll add these colors to their little paint tray or their little paint board, or I'm sure there's a name for it. I don't know what it's called. It probably is a palette. But they'll add that so they're kind of prepared. And this is what we're doing as songwriters from a lyric perspective, is really coming up with ideas that we can experiment with and try in our songs. So we're not just sitting and waiting for lines to come to us like I used to do. I like having sort of a buffet in front of me, so I can pick what I want when I need it. And I like buffets of food as well, too much. But so one of the things that you can do is look at the words in your title and come up with opposites of those words, because you would be surprised what sort of ideas or images, or sometimes just even sometimes hook ideas come out of finding opposites. Because if you listen to a lot of hit songs, there's a lot of play on opposites. You know, A Hard Day's Night, you know, that's playing on the opposite type of a thing. So finding opposites of each word or important word in your title. So like good night might be bad day, or it might turn into like horrible week. Another example would be like don't leave me, could turn into like please stay, and then being from the you perspective. Not that you would use the phrase please stay you. That sounds a little like yoga speak or Yoda speak a little bit, but finding opposites in the words of your title is something that can help you develop that palette. Also, one of the things you can do is find synonyms to the words in your title. And this is where using like an actual thesaurus, a book, or I use thesaurus.com a lot. And I'll put the words of my title one by one into Thesaurus, and then it will a lot of times show you both synonyms and antonyms, which are the opposite meaning words as well. So you can get a lot of information from there. So really the idea here is write down any of those words that resonate with that theme or that hook or that summary sentence that you wrote. Don't just pick words because they're there. Like definitely kind of use that lens of what your song is trying to say to try to pick words that resonate with you. And then another great site, if you're not using this, is relatedwords.org. This site is where you can enter words into it, and it gives you related words that are from a lot of different angles. And there, you can put in one word and get hundreds of related words, and then look for words that are, related to your topic as well. Adam, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I love this site. I just put that in the chat, and it's the closest thing that I know of. And I'm kind of not just telling you this, but also asking you. The closest thing I know of to true Roget's Thesaurus online, right? It doesn't seem like there is a true Roget's, which a lot of people don't. I mean, I didn't know until I read Pat's books, Pat Pattison, what a real thesaurus was originally supposed to be, that it's arranged by subject. And it is a really invaluable songwriting tool. And that website is the closest thing to it. So
Awesome.
Good mention.
Thank you. Yeah, so definitely this is a good one. And then like on related words, you can click on each individual word, and then it can take you to related words to that word, and you can kind of go down a lot of rabbit holes that way, which is really fun. And creating these palettes and creating these sheets of ideas is something that you can do when you maybe don't have a lot of time, or maybe you're doing something else, like maybe you are watching TV or like just kind of hanging out. You can kind of do these things without putting too much thought into it. And then you have, next time you go to sit down to write, you have this whole group of words that you can choose from. So one of my friends, Tony, he's from Ireland, and he has a YouTube channel called Songwriter Chop Shop. And he has some pointers and tips on writing from a title as well. So check this out.
Hi, Tony from Songwriters Chop Shop here. Writing from a title is a really effective way to start a song. But what if you come up with a great title and don't know what the song's going to be about? Here are some things you can do. Start asking questions like, does it provoke any imagery, like Chandelier by Sia? Or is it more abstract, like Dua Lipa's Don't Start Now? Does it feel good to sing? List anything you can think of associated with the title. This doesn't have to be just words. Engage the creative mind by sketching or doodling the things associated with your title. And keep asking questions, like what does the title mean? Why are you saying it? How do you feel about it? And why is it important? Any who, what, when, where, why, and how questions you can think of. And what's the universal truth behind the idea, and what do you want to say about it? Catch you next time.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out Songwriter Chop Shop, Tony has a lot of great videos. And I see that Adam says Rick Beato's videos are 20 plus minutes and Tony's are like 3 minutes. For sure. Tony breaks it down into very digestible and inspiring chunks. Rick Beato spends a lot of time bitching about new music to me. So, but definitely check out Songwriter Chop Shop as well. And then Charity asked if we'll post the steps. Yeah, I can send out, this, some of the steps back through the meetup group of the people that have RSVP'd, definitely. This will also be on YouTube as well. The next step is finding words that rhyme with your title words. So looking at the power words in the title. So what are power words? They're the words that hold meaning. They are not the and, but, the, like those words don't carry meaning. We're looking for the words like in Kiki's title, those would be words like coffee, old, stale, cigarette, like those words that actually carry some meaning. And one of the ways to look for rhymes is to use the vowel sounds within the word. So let's say your title was best for you. The vowels would be the o, and u. So you would look at words that rhyme with each of these vowel syllables. So you can add different, consonants on the end. And that will help you look for words that rhyme and not just the standard perfect rhymes, because perfect rhymes are where there is the exact vowel sound and the exact consonant sound. So that's a perfect rhyme. So that's as stable of a rhyme as you can get. It sounds exactly the same. The next type of rhyme, and if you want to look for the list of rhyme types, Pat Pattison has this stuff all over the internet and tons of books as well. But the next step is, or the next type rather, is family rhyme. So that's where it's in the same family. Is it a fricative, or is it a voiced sound? Like same family would be like Best would rhyme with meth. So the st and the th sound are in the fricative family. So best and meth would be a family rhyme. The next type of rhyme is where the vowel sound is the same, but the consonant on the end is different, and that would be called an assonance rhyme. So best would rhyme with bed. So that would be an assonance rhyme. The next type of rhyme that you would have would be a consonance rhyme where the vowel is different, but the consonant on the end is the same. So that would be like cast and best. So that's as far away from not rhyming as you can get, but still having a rhyme. So you have the spectrum of stable, perfect rhyme to the most unstable rhyme, which is the consonants rhyme. And the reason why you would use non-perfect rhymes is because if you don't have a perfect or stable concept in your song, perfect rhymes can actually make it sound unbelievable because it may sound forced or it sounds too stable for your topic. So studying Pat Pattison and his theories on rhyme is definitely something to look at as well. And Adam just put in the chat too the different families of the types of rhyme. Umar in the chat says check out Rhyme Wave website. Charity says Sia does this in her process. So I use Rhyme Zone a lot, and Rhyme Zone does perfect rhyme. They also do near rhymes, but one of the ways that you can do this as well is to take, so like I will show you what I did with my song. Go here. Too many windows. So here's all the steps that I did with this that started with mirror that ended up being she doesn't. So I actually picked 85 beats per minute. But when I was doing the rhyming exercise, the vowels that I were doing was the she or the e, and then doesn't, I had the usn't or the So I wrote dozen, cousin, wasn't, buzz, drugs, guns, all of these words. Because those are words. But what Adam posted in the chat is the consonant on the end. You can look up different words within Rhyme Zone to keep getting deeper and deeper within the words that rhyme. So you might start with what words rhyme with but then you might come up with gun that has an N on the end, and then you would go down that path and then maybe try like the M at the end or maybe a T at the end. Like just kind of keep going through the rhyme sounds. So you can get a palette here, if that makes sense. Any questions on sort of this step in the process? Perfect. So let's keep going. So the next step, oops, pick the right, there we go. So after you have your rhymes, now it's kind of time to start thinking about chords. So what types of chords are you going to use within your song? And again, this is where your decision process comes back to what your song is about and what emotion you want your listener to feel. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with chords and chord progressions, there are tons and tons of songs that use the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 of the key for chords that are very good to use within songwriting. So in the key of C, those chords are C, F, G, and A minor. All the chords within C are C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and then B diminished. But for those of you who are just maybe learning a few chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords of the key and the 6 chord are great places to start. And the order you play those chords will depend on the emotion that your listener gets, right? So even if your melody stays the same, let's say our melody is... If we start on a major chord, if we start on the root note, it would sound like... But what if we thought that didn't quite have the right emotion? What if we wanted it to be a little less stable? So then we might start on the A minor, because the A minor, a minor chord, is less stable. So that has a different emotion than... But what if we started on the G? Went to the F. That sounds even more... That doesn't sound that stable. So experimenting with the various chord progressions, and what a chord progression is really just the order and the pattern that you're playing your chords in. So experiment to try to find chords that resonate with the emotion that you're trying to communicate. And as you'll see, the theme here is really going back to, like, what am I trying to say emotionally, and making those decisions based on that. I see a lot of songwriters that are, maybe they just know the 1, the 4, and the 5, and they always start on the root note and the root chord of the key. I think they're missing out on opportunities to start on another chord, which technically is playing in another mode, but that will take us down a whole other rabbit hole that we're not going down today. But if you started on F, that has a different feel than if you were just starting on that root. So experiment with that to find the chord progression. The next step is to really start thinking about a song outline. And we've done this in some of the other workshops that we've had. So there's a couple ways that you can think about this. So the first is thinking always that your verse 1 is setting up a who, when, a where, and sometimes a what is going on. So verse 1, set the situation, who, when, where. Another way to think about it is setting up the so. So here's the situation, right? Your chorus then explains the emotional reason that the verse matters. So your chorus basically gives the emotional summary of what you've set up in your verse. So the verse gives the chorus, the emotional chorus, context. Verse 2, then, you can look at advancing the who, the when, the where, or you can add conflict by thinking in the concept of but. So your verse 1 is saying, so this is going on. Verse 2 could say, but this also is happening. So that adds a little bit of friction, keeps the verses saying something different. But advancing the who, when, or the where is very powerful as well. So like an example of advancing a who, maybe in your verse 1, it's talking about the other person. Maybe verse 2, it's talking about you, and then the bridge, it's talking about us, the two people together. When can progress. So verse 1 might be the past, verse 2 might be the present, the bridge might be the future. And then the where can change as well. So is it happening, I don't know, maybe verse 1 is in the car, maybe verse 2 is at the club, and then the bridge is like fighting in the alley or something, I don't know. But like you can advance those things, and then also you could use the concept of therefore as well. So verse 1 setting up, so here's the situation, but this is happening, therefore we are going to, therefore this is what happened next, basically. Any questions on that? I think making outlines is an important step to keep you on track. And then your title and your hook is always sort of in that chorus section, which is really the main why of the song. So step 9 in the process is using your title and writing a chorus. So one quick way to do this is think of your title and then write 2 lines that relate to the title and your story, and then we can drop them into a chorus template, and then you can start to ad-lib those words over the chords that you had selected in the previous steps. So let's take a couple of minutes and have each of you write down a couple of lines, maybe 2 or 3 lines that relate to your title, and then we'll talk about what to do with those lines coming up next. So I'll start the timer and we'll be back in a couple. So the next step is then taking those lines and putting them into some of these common chorus templates. And if you look at the screen, there's T's and dashes. The T's represent lines that include your title. So one of the quickest ways to write a chorus is just repeat your title. There are a ton of songs that just repeat the title in the chorus. And for your song, that actually might work if you've effectively set up the chorus within your verse. But it really depends on if there's more information that you need to share with the listener. But the other templates, like the next one down, is title, line, title, line. So, you know, it might be your title, then a line that is one of the lines that you wrote, and then your title again, and then a line that you wrote. The next one is the inversion of that, where it might be a line, then your title, a line, then your title. The fourth one down is what's really common in country music, is where the title and the hook is at the end of the chorus, where there's setup lines prior to that, and then the title's at the end. So you might have 2 or 3 lines that lead up to the title. You could also have the title and then some lines after that, or you could bookend a section with your title as well. So that's the last one that's on the screen. So one thing to do is when you are writing those lines related to your title is you can experiment with these different templates and see which one feels the best to you. And change the order. Like maybe if you had the title and then a line and then a title and then a line, what happens if you put the lines first and then end with the title? What happens if you have the title and then the lines? Like change the order or even stack these. Maybe you repeat the title a few times and then you go into other lines. Like this is a great way to experiment. Lauren in the chat has the neon hotel sign said hot. The last 2 letters long burned out. The welcome mat almost gone. Welcome to the hotel hot. Cool. Awesome. So that's kind of leading up to that hook in the end, but at the same time, you have words from the title in the first line as well. So you're kind of setting up the hook a little bit in the first line. So it's a little bit of both. Awesome. Anybody else want to share their chorus that they wrote in this step? If not, we can move on to. So Lauren, good job there. So the next step would be, and you know, it's hard to do this in a group setting, especially virtually, but the next step would be as you're writing by yourself, set that chorus to your chord progression. So sing your lyrics over your chords until you find that feeling and that melody that you like, and then you can always adjust it later and at least get a draft pretty quickly and record it into your phone or your DAW so you don't forget it. Because I don't know how many times I come up with something really cool and I think that I'll remember it and I don't. And I wish I had the original idea, because sometimes the first ideas are really fresh and you haven't overthought it. So it's good to capture some of those early ideas for sure. Next step after you have your chorus set to music, now is to start thinking about writing your verses. So one of the things that you can do is start with a rhyme scheme and come up with what sort of rhyme scheme are you going to have. And usually verses have either 4 to 6 lines within a verse. You know, if you look at a lot of commercial music, you have songs like Fire and Rain by James Taylor. his verses have 6 lines. Taylor Swift has a lot of 6-line verses, but then there's other songs that have 4-line verses. So these are some possible rhyme schemes that you can use that really go from being very stable rhyme schemes where everything rhymes all the way down to unstable where nothing rhymes. So you can have kind of the XA, which is similar to AB. You could have the bookended ABBA. You could have couplets where, the 2 lines together rhyme, or you could have no rhyme at all. And that's the other thing to remember is you don't have to rhyme. So once you have your rhyme scheme, then the step is to really write your verse. And this is where your lyric palette comes into play, where you can look for words that rhyme with each other and start dropping them into your rhyme scheme and then filling lines around that. And then also following your outline that you created to keep the story moving. And how does it flow into your chorus? So this is something that I do a lot, is using that palette to write the rhymes actually first and then build the lines around them, because I feel that it sometimes makes it sound less forced than when I'm trying to have a line and then fit a rhyme at the end. It's start with the rhyme, get that, and then build what leads up to it from there. Next step from that point is setting your verse to a chord progression. So you could use the same chord progression as your chorus, but you would then want the melody to contrast, you would want the rhythms to contrast, and you'd probably want the pitch range to be lower than your chorus as well. But the idea here is get sort of a draft version of that within this process. Once you have that done, then you can go on, use the melody that you came up with for verse 1, and then drop it all into verse 2, and then writing your bridge. Make that, contrast, use the lyric palette, use your outline, make sure the melody and everything contrast and make it different than your verses and choruses. And also from a lyrical perspective, that's where you think of therefore, or where do we go from here, or what does the future look like? And really by that time, you have a draft of a song. So I know some of these steps may seem obvious, but thinking of them in a step-by-step process can help you stay on track when you kind of feel like you're getting that writer's block, or you're kind of getting, kind of stopped up within your writing process. Lauren, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just thought, Chad, I like the way it seems to me at the beginning that you can hear me, guys. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, good. You sort of started with writing out an outline of the subject of the song. I like that because sometimes I'm in some songwriting circles, on Zoom and various places. And a lot of times, we ask the writers, or they might ask me if I wrote the song. It's not clear what the song is about. It should be clear probably from the first verse. So I think, are you saying that with most songs, when you write a song, you almost write an exposition about what the main theme is? Is that a good idea, in your opinion?
Yeah, if you listen to songs that people like, or what are commercial songs, or what would be called like popular songs, a lot of times everything is writing towards that title or the hook. It all relates to what that main idea is of the song. And one of the things that I see a lot of newer writers doing is they're trying to fit too many ideas into one song. The song at its core, like let's say it's about like a summertime love, somebody who meets in May and then by September they have to separate, right? Like there's a ton of stories that can go in there, but what writers will miss is the fact that what is that core emotion about? And the core emotion is really loss, right? In a lot of, it could be something different, but for me, the way that I'm thinking of it, it's loss. So how do I communicate the concept of loss, not only through the title, but then through the chords and through the lyrics and everything? So it's like that emotional concept, and the title becomes the really kind of the thesis of the song, right? Whereas the difference between songwriting and poetry is poetry, people are reading the title, which becomes a different lens for the rest of the lines that they're reading, and they usually read it in order. So there's a different visual setup to poetry than with songwriting. Songwriting, people aren't usually sitting down with a lyric sheet. And they also aren't necessarily, if they're hearing a song on the radio, they're not knowing what the song title is all the time. So your job as a songwriter is to show that listener what they should be feeling and basically let them leave knowing what that song title is, because that's how they're going to go and find your song. You know what I mean? And I hear a lot of people who try to be creative and they're like, this song doesn't have anything to do with this, but I'm going to name it Cabbage. It's like, okay, well, that's going to hurt the song, in my opinion, because it's not related to what the song is actually about. So I do think when you're writing, having an outline, having that title be what you're pointing to is very important. And I think you'll write stronger songs that make sense. And the other thing I hear people say is, I want the listener to fill in the blanks, right? I want the listener to figure out what the song means to them. But that's actually counterproductive, because you want people to feel something, not figure out a math problem, right? If you're too vague, you leave your listener having to figure out what the song is about, and you don't want them thinking, because once your listener starts thinking, they're not feeling it, and it's not as powerful as it could be. So your job as a songwriter is to be specific and deliver a emotional experience for the listener, and that comes from the lyrics, it comes from the melody, it comes from the chords, and it comes from the groove, and it also comes from the vocal performance, honestly. You know, that makes a big difference as well. Good question, Lauren. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts or comments? Han says, how do you use sites like RhymeZone to find non-perfect rhymes? Let me pull up RhymeZone quick. All right. So let's say you're writing a song and you land on the word heart, right? So heart, you know, everybody goes to start, apart, you know, those types of words. Perfect rhymes are going to be any of these that show up in this first page. So, you know, you're going to get all of those perfect rhymes that have the art sound in them. RhymeZone has a page where you can click on near rhymes, and near rhymes will then have related words that could rhyme. I usually scroll down and start going through these, because this is where you know, see other things that, like heart. And the thing to remember is songs are sung and they're not read. So some words may not read like they rhyme, but they could rhyme the way that you sing them. So like heart, you know, some people sing without singing the hard R, right? Like hot, don't go breaking my heart, or you know, like they sing it differently. So that might mean that like hot could rhyme with, or heart could rhyme with hot. Stopped could be heart. So that's one way to do it. The other way that you can do it is just use the main vowel sound. So that's the R sound. So you could search for R, and then it would give you rhymes that could rhyme with that. So the, you know, heart might rhyme with scar, you know, those types of things. And then try adding, you know, like yarn has the same vowel with a different consonant. So going to go there, and then do near rhymes for those. So it's kind of just taking the vowel and changing the consonants on the end and going in and looking to see what rhymes and what resonates, right? So like heart might be darned, you know, heart, gone, because you're singing the sound, like heart. So it could be really any word like that. So that's kind of how I do it, is just really experiment with the different consonants and that vowel sound. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is brilliant. This actually opens up the Pandora's box for me. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
The idea of just using the vowel sound as your keyword is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where the words, the power in words kind of does carry within the vowel, and that's where the related rhymes come from, for sure.
Right. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, thanks everybody for joining me. I know we usually don't do these on Sunday, but definitely good to see everybody, and we'll see you at the next workshop. And if you do have any other questions after this, you can always reach out to me through Meetup, and be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at homesongwriting.com too. So thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day.